The humidity in Newport that September morning was heavy, but it was nothing compared to the pressure, the sheer electric weight of expectation. You're standing on the sidewalk outside St. Mary's Church, and honestly, you can barely breathe. It feels like the entire eastern seaboard has descended on this one little corner of Rhode Island. There are over 2,000 people packed behind police barricades, craning their necks just to catch a glimpse of a veil. It's a media frenzy. Cameras flashing like summer lightning, the scent of expensive perfume mixing with the exhaust of 100 idling limousines. Inside, it's not just a wedding, it's a political coronation. You're squeezed into a pew looking around. There's the future of American power sitting just rows away. Senators, diplomats, socialites. You spot Vice President Nixon and former President Truman chatting quietly with Ed Sullivan, only 3 feet away from the Astors and the Vanderbilts. You see the Kennedys, a dynasty in the making, their energy radiating off the altar. As Jacqueline Bouvier walks down that aisle, the air in the church changes. It's no longer just a ceremony, it's the birth of a myth. You can feel it in your bones. This isn't just a senator marrying a photographer. This is the beginning of something that will define an era. It's chaotic, it's glamorous, and for every person here, it feels like we're watching history hold its breath. Then the doors open, the organ swells. Fast forward to today, the cameras are gone, the crowds have dispersed, but the stone and stained glass of St. Mary's remain. That's where Jenn takes us in this episode. She's walking the same aisles, standing in the same light, where a young Jack and Jackie stood, unknowingly stepping toward a future and a tragedy that would change the world forever. Welcome to Talk with History. I'm your host, Scott, here with my wife and historian, Jenn.
Hello.
On this podcast, we give you insights to our history-inspired world travels, YouTube channel journey, and examine history through deeper conversations with the curious, the explorers, and the history lovers out there.
Living is a loving thing. But when you're loving, you live in love.
All right, before we start, Jenn, it's been a little while since I've had a good 5-star review to read for the podcast. So for our podcast listeners, we're coming into busy season, coming into the summertime. Everybody's on the road and listening. So if you're on the road and your loved one is sitting next to you in the car, tell them to get on their phone, open up the podcast app, drop us a 5-star review, and I'll read it here on the podcast. So this video, you actually recorded probably like 6 months ago.
Yeah.
We are recording this podcast episode March of 26. You recorded this back in September, I think. And it was a beautiful time of year up there in Newport. One of your last kind of cruises for American Cruise Line. And you got up to Newport and you got to go see the church where JFK married then Jacqueline Bouvier.
Yeah, so as maybe some of our listeners don't know, I'm the historian on American Cruise Line, one of the historians, and I do the history talk every night after we've gotten underway, again, before we pull into port the next day, and I talk about where we're going next and history about it. And usually before we pull into Newport, and anytime I do this whole New England island area, the Kennedys is something you just can't avoid, right? There's so much immersed in Martha's Vineyard and off the coast of, Massachusetts, Kennebunkport, but Newport. And when we pull in with the American Cruise Line, we're right beside Hammersmith Farm. And so most people don't realize that our ship docks right beside that farm where the Auchinclawses lived, and that is Jackie's stepfather, and that's where her mother marries into that family, and that's where they will have their wedding reception. And then all through JFK's presidency, they will visit there. That'll be where they kind of vacation. And then they sail out of the harbor where we are actually part of with American Cruise Line. So all those famous sailing pictures, that's all from Newport. And if you know anything about Newport, it's a big sailing town anyway. So anytime we're on the tram with American Cruise Line, we'll drive right by St. Mary's Church. And I always point out that's where they got married. Well, I never had a chance to actually go there. And you never know how much these historic locations embrace their historic stories.
Yeah, it definitely varies from what you've seen from spot to spot.
Some places don't want to be really associated with those historic stories. They want to tell a different story. But this church embraces the marriage, and they have photographs of it. And even when I approached them about filming inside, she was like, yes, please do. Please tell this story. We want more people to know. We want more people to visit. We actually have the original kneeling. What did they call those? Prayer?
Kind of like, I don't know. That's a good question. I don't know if they have an official name.
I say it in the video. The prayer kneelers that they use, and it's the only picture from inside from the wedding. They actually have those where they're kneeling and saying a prayer during the mass that is their wedding. And so it was super cool, right? Because what you don't realize is as you're walking up to the church is those famous photographs really have the architecture of the doorway behind them, and you're standing right there.
And it hasn't changed, right? Mm-hmm. Like the one for our listeners, you can probably picture in your head JFK and Jackie walking out of the church. Black and white picture, pretty typical, kind of this kind of Pope type arch, right? Kind of an arch up, has a point. And then within that, it's got this circular kind of design, typical of that architecture.
Yeah, big brown masonry.
Yeah, masonry over the door.
Mm-hmm.
And so you can picture that in your head, those two, kind of the picture kind of from down below, catching them coming out. Because if you watch our video, and for our listeners, I'll link this in the show notes. If you watch our video, I found one picture that had been taken from up high, and just this mass of people outside the church as they start walking out. And so the fact that you get a couple clean photographs of those two walking out, that's what you can picture in your head. And you're standing right at those doors. So what you have to know about this historically is really this is the birth of Camelot. So when we talk about Camelot and the Kennedys, this is their fairy tale story of American royalty. And this wedding really mimics those images you have of British royalty getting married. Yeah.
Like this looks a lot like Diana when she got married. It looks a lot like Princess Kate when she gets married to William. Like this is America's version of this. And it looks just like it picture perfect looks like that. And so the church is a very big church. St. Mary's Roman Catholic Church is it could hold 800 people.
Yeah, it's huge.
And that's how many people came to that wedding. And inside is just beautiful. And we'll talk more about the church history. But that's not where Jackie had originally gone to church. That's not where she wanted to get married. Now, you have to realize she's a local. She's a Newport local. Like, this is where she has been raised. And if you know anything about, we've talked about before, the Gilded Age and these aristocratic families of America, she's part of that. That's why she lives in Newport. That's why she's raised in Newport.
Yeah, so she comes from some of that old money.
She comes from that old money. When you think of like you said, the Rockefellers, the Astors, and all these people that live in Newport.
The Vanderbilts. We've
been to those Gilded Age mansions. Jackie Bouvier is part of that. Her mother has married into, even though Bouvier was that and her father is part of that, he has basically swindled the money away with his habits, and he has gambling habits and intoxication habits. So he has liquor habits, and that also prevents him from walking her down the aisle that day.
That's one of the things that when I got some couple facts I'm going to try to bring up here. That was one of the things that I brought up, because you can see there's some very quick, you can find it on YouTube, and I clipped it in the video, very quick video footage of them walking out of her getting out of her limousine with her stepfather, and then getting ready to walk into the church. But that's why it's her stepfather and not her father.
Yes. And the Arkansas family. Now, if you've seen our videos from Newport, we've gone to Jackie's mother's grave. They are both buried there in Newport. So you have to think this is very much an aristocratic family. Now, the Kennedys want to be a part of this crowd, right? They're not really born into this crowd, but their family has high ambitions, and very high ambitions for John F. Kennedy. At the time, he's a senator. And marrying into this type of family meets their ambitions.
Yeah.
And so you can I wouldn't say it was an arranged marriage, but she was an approved person to date and to pursue. Let's put it that way. But this wedding is just beautiful. Robert Kennedy is in like a full-on tuxedo with the tails. Her dress is gorgeous. And they have all of these attendants, which you will learn later in history will be like his brothers, his sisters, her sister, right? So these people are going to play bigger parts in American history, and they are the attendants to their wedding. So it was just super cool to walk down that aisle. You have full access to all of that. They sat in pew 10 when they would come back to Newport and worship. I sat in pew 10. I give you a full vantage point of what it would look like to see the church from pew 10. So what they saw every time they would come in. And then I walk you over to where the wedding couple had prayed on the kneelers, and the photograph that exists from the wedding are those kneelers, and those are original. When Scott was making the video, he's like, there's not a lot of pictures
from inside
the wedding, from inside the chapel. And I was like, well, I don't know if that was socially a norm at the time, right? Nowadays, we take a ton of pictures everywhere, but I don't know if that was at the time not considered prudent to be photographing inside a church.
And it's so interesting because that just lends to the exclusivity of the event.
Yes.
Right. So at the time, partly it was, it was 53, right? So
it's September 12th, 1953.
September 12th, 1953. So photography was everywhere, right? Obviously, we've got newsreels of this. And so they could have been in there, but it just wasn't a thing, right? Like it is nowadays. And again, that lent to how exclusive this was. And that was, I think, was it Jackie Kennedy's, Jacqueline Bouvier's father who kind of worked, or maybe it was on the Kennedy side, worked the guest list.
Oh, it was the Kennedys.
It was the Kennedys, right? So they worked this guest list, and they've got political rivals there, but they had like just everybody there. It was when I looked up a list of, I kind of just typed it into Google, give me a list of famous names of people who were at the JFK wedding. And I started reading it. I was like, oh my gosh, right? Truman had just left office, right? He was there. Nixon was vice president. So it was just, and that those are just two people.
Ed Sullivan
was there.
It was a who's who of society. Like you wanted
totally
to be at this wedding. Very much like when we saw in our lifetime, when we saw the Kate and William wedding.
Yeah.
And it was so much like celebrities and high-ranking people from around the world. It was kind of a hodgepodge of both. This is exactly what this wedding was. And to what Scott said, maybe a lot of people didn't want to be photographed or didn't want all the spotlight there. So you have a difference in how many people are at the ceremony than how many people come to the reception.
Oh, yes.
So because the church only holds 800, that's how many people came to the ceremony. But then Hammersmith Farm, which is like a horse farm where do you see a lot of Jacqueline Bouvier on the horses, and they basically have the reception outdoors.
Yeah.
And they can put all these tables outdoors. 1,200 people come to the reception. And this is when you first, I would say it probably starts happening before this, but I kind of get the feeling that this is when they first become bigger than their own lives.
Yeah.
And, we're talking a lot about right now in media is John F. Kennedy Jr.'s wedding, right? 1996. He gets married on an island, a secluded island with 30 people, and they keep it very secret.
But it was still a huge media frenzy,
Yes.
right? Not there, but just the fact that it happened.
And I think he really was influenced by what happened to his parents, because this is where you really start to see they're really pawns, even in their own wedding.
Yeah.
Like Jackie doesn't wear a dress she wants to wear.
Yeah, I have that note here. So you bring that up, and that's one of the facts that I brought up is, so there's the famous dress, right, designed by Anne Lowe. Beautiful dress. You can see the pictures, and if for our listeners and our watchers, like I've put pictures of her, in her dress at the reception and at the wedding ceremony. She is absolutely gorgeous. Her dress looks amazing on her. I think you said something like 50 yards of fabric.
Yes, because it's pleated.
Which is
so
crazy.
Much pleating, and it's heavy.
But Anne Lowe who was a prominent African-American designer at the time. She wasn't really given public credit then, but it came out later. But I guess Jackie actually preferred the more sleek kind of French style. And so I guess from what I saw when I looked up, Jackie reportedly told her friends she looked like a lampshade, and kind of like a patchwork quilt. I don't know if that's true. I'd have to go and dive deep and see, and that stuff. But it's interesting, like you said, even within their own wedding, it's, hey, here's the dress you're going to wear.
Yeah, so she wants something more sleek, kind of like what Carolyn Bessette will wear when she marries John F. Kennedy Jr. She just wears that plain silk gown that also is a fashion iconic dress. But that's what Jackie wants to wear. But her family's like, how are people going to see that?
Yeah.
You have 800 people. You need something that has some
presence,
girth to it. Yeah, some presence. And so that's why there's like 50 yards of fabric. It's pleated. It kind of sticks out. And I can see where she gets this patchwork quilt kind of thing, because it looks like quilting almost, like the design, but it stands out. The dress basically looks like it could stand on its own without a person in it.
Yeah.
Right. And Jackie Kennedy at the time, Bouvier Kennedy, she's small. She's small framed. Like this dress is really like making her double the size.
But she looks amazing in it. The reception pictures, which are where you get the most of the pictures, it's just absolutely stunning. It's storybook picturesque.
Oh, the dress is iconic for sure. But you can see why her family wanted her to wear something like that and kind of forced it upon her. Like most brides think it's their day. I decide, well, not in this case. When you start to think of this American royalty, Camelot, this is the first time we're going to see, like, we know John F. Kennedy had a lot of autonomy while his brother was alive. But once his brother was killed, then he got pushed to the front of the family as their token, like what they want to move through society. And so, John F. Kennedy is really like being pushed into the spotlight.
Yeah.
And here he is marrying into society.
Yeah.
And she is starting to feel, I'm sure she felt it beforehand, but she's starting to also have this same, like, I don't get the choice. This is chosen for me.
It seems to me like this, for the Kennedys, this was the tipping point that really brought them into the status that they wanted.
Yes, this was it. And like I said, it was a who's who of society at the wedding, a huge reception, beautiful photographs, and it all starts September 12th, 1953, and you can visit that church today.
Yeah, and so a couple other interesting facts. So you talked about the 1,200 people that went to a reception. So I guess the receiving line, right, where you're kind of standing there saying hello to your guests, they stood there for 3 hours and greeted every single person that came through. 3 hours.
I know. Well, you can imagine. We've been married 20 years, and I told Scott when we were getting married, everyone wants their moment with the bride and groom.
Yeah.
Everyone wants that moment to say, congratulations.
I shook their hand.
Yeah.
A small anecdote.
And we only had 125 at our wedding.
Yeah.
You can imagine 1,200 people. Everyone wants their moment with you.
So some other things here. I kind of took a look at some of the facts around their wedding and compared them to modern day norms, right? Because I just thought that was interesting. And so in 1953, the guest list was about 1,200 people, right? As you mentioned at the reception. Nowadays, it's still considered large if you're only from anywhere from 200 to 500, and that's at the high end, right? Not everybody's going to have 500 people at their wedding. This wedding had 1,200. The dress back then, it cost about $500. That was in 53, which in today's money would be almost $6,000. Now today, there's some brides out there that are spending $100,000, tens of thousands of dollars. So but again, iconic picture at the time. The venue that was at the Hammersmith farm, again, that was family estate. Again, today people are dropping tons of money, to host their wedding reception somewhere.
I'm sure they had to rent everything still and catering.
And we don't really do that whole reception line as much anymore. It's not as common.
Not as common. What we did is we went to the tables.
Yeah, and that's what people will do. They'll get up and walk around. They won't necessarily stand there at a reception line. So again, kind of difference in media presence, right? Back then it was Life magazine and local press. Today it's all social media stuff. And then I couldn't find anywhere online what the total estimated cost of the JFK wedding was, right? And then on high-end weddings, people are spending hundreds of thousands, if not $1 million, right? Not the average person, but we're talking high society type folks. Yeah. So just kind of an interesting comparison to them at the time and what I'll call high society or the rich, the wealthy are doing nowadays.
Yeah, they were definitely setting a precedence because it wasn't like society people weren't getting married and having huge weddings. That was happening. They just weren't the media frenzy. And this is a marriage of society and politics. And so that didn't happen as much. And so this really was setting a precedence for what was going to be, again, Camelot. And again, we're talking about this beginning of this whole fairy tale America royalty story. This is the start of it all. And the church is very historic for Newport.
Yeah.
And that was another thing going there. Like they built in around 1828. So they were talking about how in 2028, they was going to have their 200th anniversary, one of these original Newport churches. But also during the Civil War, the Naval Academy is moved from Annapolis to Newport. If you know anything about Newport, we've talked about it before. It has a big naval presence there. It's where Scott went to graduate school. We're going back there for more of his training. And so they moved the Naval Academy there for protection further north during the Civil War. And they used this church as their chapel.
Yeah, for the Naval Academy.
For the Naval Academy.
Yeah.
And if you know, John F. Kennedy served in the United States Navy, right? That's one of the things I say in the video. He says with a lot of pride, I can say I served in the United States Navy. And I just love that about him because, of course, we can relate to that. And so to be married in that church, I'm sure he knew that history, getting married there as well. But I just think it comes kind of full circle that you're a former naval officer who's going to eventually become president of the United States is married in a church that once served the United States Naval Academy. It embraces the story. So they want you to visit. They open the church up for visitors.
It's beautiful inside. It's that classic Roman Catholic style, stained glass windows, and the organ has been there for forever. I think the organ's super old.
Yes.
It's a beautiful church. You know, if you're up in the Newport area in the summertime, it's a great place to swing by and visit real quick.
And lots of stained glass windows. And I think it's free to visit. I left a donation, so it's there for you. It's available to you. I definitely recommend going in there and seeing it because it is just one of those awestruck moments of American history that you get to stand there in the presence of American royalty.
As you stand in the quiet of St. Mary's, the thing that strikes you isn't the opulence, it's the intimacy of the space. Despite the 1,200 guests and media helicopters, at the end of the day, it was just two people in a wooden pew making a promise in a small seaside church. We call it Camelot now, but in 1953, it was just a beginning. And while the marriage would eventually face trials that would break the heart of a nation, that day in Newport remains frozen in time, a perfect, golden moment of American royalty before the world changed forever. Now, next time you're in Newport, take a walk down Spring Street, sit in pew 10 and listen closely. You might just hear the echoes of the organ playing for a young senator and his bride. We'll talk to you next time.
Thank you. That was a good outro.
This has been a Walk with History production. Talk with History is created and hosted by me, Scott Benny. Episode researched by Jennifer Benny. Check out the show notes for links and references mentioned in this episode. Talk with History is supported by our community at thehistoryroadtrip.com. Our eternal thanks go out to our lifetime members to help keep us going. Thank you to Doug Liberty, Larry Myers, Patrick Benny, Gail Cooper, Christy Coates, Calvin Gifford, Courtney Sanini, Gene Noah, Larry Mitchell, Tommy Anderson, Susan Sulis, Bruce Lynch, Dino Garner, Mark Barrett, Don Kennedy, and John Simpson. Make sure you hit that follow button in that podcast player, and we'll talk to you next time.